Welcome to KRA's The Hub, the official podcast of KRA Corporation. And now get ready to hear workforce topics and trends you need to know on the go.
Hello and welcome back to KRA's The Hub. This is Doug Foresta. Of course, I'm with Jonathan Overall, and today our special guest is Ed Hidalgo, founder of Ed Hidalgo Consulting. We're going to be talking about education and career learning. Jonathan, Ed, welcome.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Doug. It's always great to be with you. And also thank you, Ed. Let's jump right in to our first question today. I know that we're excited to really just begin to further the dialogue around the work that you're doing. Can you give us an overview, Ed, of Ed Hidalgo Consulting and the work that you do in the career development space?
Thank you, Jonathan and Doug, for having me today. And definitely honored to share about the work that I get to do. I feel so blessed, so fortunate to be able to focus on career development across the lifespan. So whoever thought that I would leave the corporate world of HR and staffing to integrate career theory starting in the earliest grades, as early as kindergarten and TK, and on the other side, work with retirees. So when we say that career development is a lifespan process, I'm actually living that process, that experience. And through that work, it means that I get to work with schools, K-12 school districts, higher ed, but also families like I was doing last night. Working with a family and their child, a high schooler who's getting ready to graduate, but really doesn't know what they want to do in their future and what's next for them. Having the opportunity to work in all these different environments through the lens of career development allows me to help every young person or adult find their place in the world. And that's what Hidalgo Consulting is all about, helping everyone find their place in the world.
Thank you so much. Many of our listeners are workforce development professionals of one type or another. Talk about why should career learning in K through 12 be on our radar in workforce?
It should absolutely be on your radar because I have been a workforce board member for more than 10 years in my own community. And so I've really had the opportunity to understand the insides of the workforce development system and WIOA and WIA before that. And what a surprise to step into public education to see what actually happens while young people are developing in schools. And I have to tell you that there's a significant disconnect between what's happening in school and the things that you care about as workforce development professionals, which is getting people back to work. It's why your services are so needed. But I can imagine a world where if we prioritized workforce development, but I'm more specifically talking about human development, helping every individual, every child develop a vision of their hoped for future possible selves, and develop a language of self in the world. If they ever did need to step into one of your offices for workforce counseling, workforce coaching, retraining, how much more prepared they would be to have a conversation with your coaches, to actually engage with your business, with what you do as workforce professionals. As it is today, that conversation typically doesn't happen in K-12. And for that reason, I think we graduate many a young student into the world of work without a deep knowledge of who they are, who they want to become, and what their strengths, interests, and values are. And so for that, a significant disservice. That is a really important reason why workforce professionals should understand what's happening in K-12 and maybe what's not, so they can better serve the people who come in through your doors.
That's great. Now, Ed, you are an advocate of those three areas that you just described: strengths, interests, and values, specifically for the educators, those that are helping to build a foundation for career advising. Can you walk us through why that foundation is so important for those that are providing impactful career advising?
Thank you, Jonathan. I think it's critical, and I'll give all the credit to Dr. Miyashiro, the superintendent, where I spent the last 6 years working and supporting and integrating career development. We realized from the very beginning that if we were going to ask the teachers to integrate this work into their classrooms, which was what we've been successful in doing, essentially bringing career-related learning, career-related teaching into the instructional core, we can't ask the teachers to do that if we don't invite them into that process for themselves first. And for many of the adults within our school systems, they've never been invited into a process of career-related learning for themselves as humans. As adult humans, they can't articulate their strengths, interests, and values. So as you think of someone sitting down to an interview and the question comes up, what are your strengths? Or the fear that kind of emerges within people to answer that question. But what if all people could answer that question authentically through a real understanding, a process of learning of what their natural talents are? What are their giftings? And if we want to take that even further, we understand, especially from Gallup's research, that when you're able to use your strengths at work, there's a greater chance for you to be more engaged, to have well-being in your life because you're using your natural talents. And the same goes for interests and values as well. When we understand those elements of self and we're invited to use those elements of self, deploy them where they're actually valued in the things that we're doing, that's where we find our flow. That's where we find our happy place. That's where we can find well-being and satisfaction in the things that we do, whether it's workplace or school place. And so that's why it's so important to start with the adults first, so that they can see, just like the impact that happens for them, this is the impact that we can also have on students.
Thank you so much, Ed. So can you talk a little bit about, I think we can see why this is so powerful, but can you offer us some tangible ways that workforce organizations can collaborate with schools to reinforce career exploration, awareness?
100%. So by far, the greatest cornerstone of our work is creating a common language of self in the world. And Dr. Mark Savickas, who is a globally known PhD in vocational counseling, he would say that the self that a person makes themselves into is a function of language. But if you don't have the word for it, you don't get there. You already have a language. In workforce, you have a language. It's called RIASEC. And it's a code switching opportunity for you to speak the language of career with schools and with young people. Only young people in schools don't know your language. It's been embedded and hidden within an assessment. Shame on us, the adults, although it was intended to be used for assessment through Dr. Holland's work. What we've learned is that when we invite young people and adults to learn the language of career through RIASEC, through Holland's framework, we instantly begin to develop a common language between self and the world.
Ed, you referenced the RIASEC language, and it's also known as Holland's theory of career choice, correct? Can you just give a little bit of an overview for our listeners who may not be familiar with that?
Sure, absolutely. So Holland's framework in the RIASEC, it's the most researched of all vocational typologies. Dr. Holland was a vocational counselor, finished his career at Johns Hopkins, but way back when, in the 40s, he began to develop this theory of person and personality and environment. And the idea is there are 6 themes that align to individuals' personality as it relates to work. So the realistics, the investigatives, the artistics, the socials, enterprising, and conventionals. Most people are a combination of 2 or 3 of those themes on that RIASEC, which you can do a search online and learn a little bit more about it. What's interesting is not only is it a framework that we can apply to ourselves as individuals, we can also apply it to work environments. And the idea is that if our personal preferences match those of work environments, that we'll find our fit in the world, so to speak. What's powerful about the RIASEC, once again, is that the government's database of jobs uses it to classify more than 900 different careers. Universities use the same language of RIASEC, Holland's framework, to classify majors. And so there's a lot of utility to it. So if I would say, what's a great way for workforce boards to work with schools? Encourage them to develop a language of self through self-reporting of RIASEC themes, which we do all the time in our practice. Help schools see how the RIASEC themes are more important when students own those results versus getting a tested result. Here's what you're going to be, or here's what you should do. Invite them into an agentic process of understanding self, and then helping them connect to the wonderful careers in the O-Net, amazing majors at top universities across the United States that use the same language of RIASEC. And even as we're starting to see more community colleges using it to organize pathways and careers within those pathways, altogether, you see that we have a common language from K to Gray. The RIASEC serves as that connection, that common language amongst all of us, so that we can find self in the world. I would say that, number one. Number two, making it possible for your employer partners to be able to come into the school sites in person or virtually, and have those employers use the same language. Invite them to learn the language for themselves, because if the schools are doing the work, the students are going to ask the adults, what are your RIASEC themes? Tell us about what you do in your work. How do your RIASEC themes connect? And that common language is powerful, mostly for the students, because it builds an occupational identity. They begin to see themselves in the world. But without language, it doesn't happen.
Ed, for workforce organizations that are interested really in getting more involved with career education, what kind of advice would you give them on where they should start and who they should connect with in that space?
I appreciate this question. I would say always start with the superintendent, or the board. The superintendent works for the board. So if you have connections with the board, that's a great place to start. Second would be the superintendent, get their buy-in. Typically what the superintendent wants is what flows out into the district. But within schools, there are directors of CTE, career and technical education. They're a great place to start. But I would say things like CTE are for some kids, not all. And I think in this world of work that you are living in, and you're seeing this better than anyone, you have a leadership position to play that can inform schools. So starting with that superintendent, and then advocating for a common language of career across the entire ecosystem, school ecosystem, is where we can serve all students instead of some students. Because not all students are going to matriculate into a CTE pathway. They can't even get into a CTE pathway because they're full. So to make the greatest impact on an entire system would be to start with leadership, invite them into your world, help them understand how this language of career, the value that it can have. I'm sure you use the ONET, so you understand the power of this language. And then from there, hopefully they'll connect you to folks like their directors of CTE, or some teachers on special assignments that are doing this work, or maybe even some classrooms where teachers are actually deploying this work. Of course, I would love to have you in one of the districts that I get to work with, because we'd love to partner. I'd love to connect you with the right people. But again, it's always superintendent, supporting staff, CTE directors. Those are the folks to get to know, and they'll help you get in front of kids and tell the story about the world of work.
You mentioned that, of course, you'd love to partner with folks. And so if people listening to this and they say, well, that sounds really great, how do I work with Ed Hidalgo? Tell people how they could connect and learn more.
Definitely reach out to me. You can go to my website. It's ed@hidalgo.com. I also work with a great set of partners at Educators Cooperative. You can see our work at their website as well. On Twitter at Ed Hidalgo SD, or of course, LinkedIn is a great place to connect. But if there's anyone out there that wants to bring a human process of career-related teaching and learning into their school ecosystem, we're the ones that can do it. And the language that we use is the language of workforce. I'd be excited to talk to anyone who's interested and see really how we can move career development from transactional to a transformational practice across the entire school ecosystem.
That's great. I just want to, again, thank you, Ed, for today's conversation. I believe it's so relevant in the workforce and the economy of today, and really where things are going tomorrow. We hear a lot about AI and technology, and the education system really needs to be transformative. The workforce system needs to be transformative, and the two really need to work together. And so I believe that what you're doing in today's dialogue around that career readiness is so important and great value to our listeners. So again, we appreciate it. Look forward to opportunities as well for us to be able to connect with you in the future in the workspace as well, but also have you on as a guest sometime again in the future to talk about evolving topics in this space.
It's been a pleasure to be with both of you here today. Thank you for the work that you do serving our citizens, and I look forward to continue to watch your progress. Yeah, making an impact in the lives of others. So thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to KRA's The Hub. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. To learn more about KRA Corporation, visit www.kra.com. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back soon with a new episode.